Hey everyone, and welcome to the Wrap Up Live. This is the official Raptors Republic live post-game show and podcast where we recap, we dissect, and we talk about the latest Raptors game that you just finished watching. I'm your host, Sahal Abdi. Again, I'm here with my co-host, Oren Weisfeld. And this is the second game of the season, so this is my first time hosting with Oren this season. It should be fun. First game, the home opener, I was with Kyle. Now it's Oren. And this live show was produced by none other than Keon Haddad. Tonight, your Toronto Raptors were defeated by the Brooklyn Nets, 109-105, bringing the Raptors record to 1-1 in this new 2022 NBA season. And last but not least, if you love the Toronto Raptors, do us hardworking individuals at Raptors Republic a favor and subscribe to the Raptors Republic YouTube and our Rapcast podcast channel, whether you're watching or listening. All right, Oren, this was a really fun game. This was a fun game. It was a lot of back and forth, a lot of big shots, a lot of big dunks, a lot of big blocks. This is probably what you wanted to see in a Raptors versus Brooklyn Nets game, where both teams were fairly healthy. There are a lot of standout storylines. Just general takeaways really quick from the game. What stood out to you the most from the game, I guess, to start us off?
Yeah, I guess it's just upsetting that they lost because, like, we know the East is going to be really tough this year. There's going to be a lot of games like this that come down to the end and the last couple of minutes. And I think the standings are going to be really tight at the end of the year. And we're going to look back on some games like this just because it was such a winnable game. The Nets were not very good. Like, KD and Kyrie really went off in the second half, and kudos to them because they made really tough shots. But they were not it was not a good effort from the Nets. And it just wasn't a good enough effort from the Raptors outside of Pascal tonight, unfortunately. Like, I thought, obviously, we'll talk about him. He was amazing. He did everything he could to get them there. But the young players were really showing their youth today, whether it was Koloko, Precious Achua, OG had a really bad game. Trent had a really bad game. It goes down the list. Like, we talk about depth. It wasn't a deep enough team today, and just like stupid mistakes really pissed me off. We can get into some of them, but the way they defended Ben Simmons, who doesn't look at the rim because he's afraid to score, it really bothered me because they kept sending bodies to Ben Simmons, and Ben would just throw it out for an open three, and it was like, can we stay disciplined defensively? And the Raptors couldn't tonight. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was a high octane game. It reminded me of the end of the home opener, when the fourth quarter just felt like everything was moving at such a fast pace. We can't really get into a deep dive into this game without mentioning Pascal Siakam and his incredible not just game but fourth quarter stretch. If we go to the fourth quarter first, right? 5 minutes into the fourth quarter, or 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, I should say, he hit a big three. Literally a minute later, 4:48, he had a huge dunk after the Ben Simmons turnover. That one was stolen by Fred VanVleet. 20 seconds later, he hit a turnaround jump shot and one on Royce O'Neal. A minute after that, with 3:31 left in the third, he hit another three after a Royce O'Neal turnover, and then he put on a dribbling exhibition at 2:54 third quarter. I had to time stamp all of these because Pascal was going on a solo run, something that you probably only see Oren in NBA 2K My Career when you put the game on rookie mode. 2:54, like I said, puts on a dribbling exhibition, one-on-one versus Claxton, hit it, and then he gave us, funny enough, Oren, he gave us his iteration of the Michael Jordan shrug, where he was just smiling and laughing, shaking his head, wondering how.
Didn't he like cross his arms and do this down the court?
Yeah, he was just like, I think he was just shocked, I guess, how every single shot was dropping for him. But again, this is an all NBA player. We're not too shocked. The Nets
And then
crowd
at the
sounded
end of
shocked.
the game for Pascal, like he started, both teams hadn't really double teamed him in terms of Cleveland and Brooklyn. But at the end of the game, they started doubling him on everything, and he was just finding Scotty under the basket on cuts for like 2 dunks. He found Fred for a 3 in the perimeter. Like,
Yeah.
as soon as they started doubling him, you finally saw the playmaking chops that we haven't really seen so far this season come out. So yeah, you really couldn't ask anything more from Pascal tonight. Like super efficient, triple double. Um, it sucks that they lost after that performance.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask you. Does it hurt a bit that he dropped 37, 13, and 11 on 15 for 20 shooting? It might be his most efficient game this season. Like 15 for 20 is difficult to do for any player in the league. Do you feel like this is a wasted opportunity for Toronto in this game for Pascal to go off like this and I guess to just come out with a loss?
For sure, and it goes back to like what we were talking about. I feel like all preseason with like the depth being so good, everyone was saying like, "Oh man, this team this year, Fred and Pascal no longer have to carry them as much because the depth this year is so good." And like this was just an example of a night where nobody outside of those two really had it. And so I think that's the disappointing part for me. Yeah, it sucks to lose a game where Fred was or where Pascal was really good, but it's like, why did we lose? Because Precious didn't show up tonight. Koloko looked like the rookie that he is. OG did not look good until like he hit a couple threes at the end, and we know OG is going to play defense. So like that's great. Like I love OG's defense, but we've
Yeah.
come to expect a little more from him, and he just wasn't good. He wasn't intentional in his drives. He threw a couple silly turnovers, and he wasn't hitting shots until the fourth quarter. Gary started taking some really bad shots in the third quarter, and then in the fourth he couldn't bury anything open. Like Thad was. I would like to see Thad get a few more minutes,
Mhm.
honestly, but he hasn't done very much in the last couple
So
games. So
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. With that, it's tough because you watch him and his age is really showing at this point this season. I don't know if he just has to get his legs underneath him. For all of the House of the Dragon watchers, I made a joke in a group chat. I won't disclose what group chat it is, but for all of my House of the Dragon fans out there, that was moving around like King Viserys, in his final stages of life. He just
that's
wasn't.
where I am in House of the
He's
Dragons, actually. I'm a little
Yeah,
behind.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he looks like an older guy. I mean, last year we saw a little bit more of a springy Thaddeus Young. I mean, relative to his age, of course. But he was only given 6 minutes in this game. He shot one shot. It was a three. He missed it. He was a +4, but again, in 6 minutes, is that really, telling at all? At this point, yeah, the depth didn't give the Raptors much. I mean, you got 9 points from Precious Achua, Christian Koloko, and Delano Banton combined. Nothing from Thaddeus Young. Hernan Gomez didn't play. Kem Birch was healthy apparently. He was active, but he didn't play. He got a DNP as well. Malachi Flynn didn't play. So it's tough. It's tough for the Raptors because although you got very good games from Pascal Siakam, pretty good game from Scotty Barnes. Fred VanVleet was super super active defensively. I mean, if you look at the box score alone, Fred had 18 points, 9 assists, and 7 rebounds. You're thinking that's a pretty good game on an efficient 7 for 11 shooting. But really, where he made his mark tonight was the defense. And I saw you make a tweet, Oren, where you essentially said, Fred is his role decreases offensively a little bit, and he can focus and hone in defensively a little bit more. He's almost guaranteed an All NBA spot. Are you sticking with that?
For sure. Yeah. Like Fred took 9 shots today and 9 shots in the Cleveland game. And that's like we've come to expect Fred to kind of pound the ball. Nick talked nobody like who really follows the Raptors believes anything Nick Nurse says. So when he talked in the preseason about like Fred's gonna play off ball more, everyone was like, yeah, okay, let's like when I see it, I'll believe it, right? But he
Yeah.
really is playing off ball quite a bit. That like there was even a lineup out there with no backup point guard, no Fred, no Delano, and it just goes to show that like the Raptors are kind of over the idea of like having a traditional point guard handle the ball. And Fred's really to his credit because I think it's the best thing for the team. He's really off ball. He's taking threes, and that's pretty much it. Other than here and there, like a little mid range floater, pull up. Um, so credit to him for taking a step back offensively because, and yeah, to the defensive point, that allows him to put like almost 100% into his every defensive possession. And what we've seen through 2 games, and we've seen it in spurts at other times, is like when Fred is really giving it all defensively, he's unbelievable. First of all, he's a
Mhm.
steals magnet. He had 4 last game, 4 today. So that's 8 already on the season. Like he
It's
must be
insane.
leading the league. Fantasy owners are in heaven right now.
Rejoice, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, he does pretty much everything good defensively. Like the only thing is in the post, he gets overmatched by bigs for sure. But he's so smart. If you watch, Fred will be in the post. He'll get a switch into a big guy in the post, and if the ball doesn't go straight to that big, Fred will scram switch it, and he'll just like call Scotty, and Scotty will take the big, and Fred will go to the perimeter to take a smaller player. So yeah, I definitely see a all defensive team for Fred this year.
Yeah, he looks like a menace. There's so many possessions that aren't even, I guess that you can't even really look at it, and it's not technically, it might not be a steal by Fred, it might not be a block, or I mean, that last steal at the end of the possession, or what would have been a steal, I mean, if Nick Nurse didn't use that challenge, which honestly, I still felt like you probably should have, because I felt like Royce O'Neal did flop at the end there. But it's tough because I guess what the referees were looking at was the extension of the arm
Speaking
by
of
Pascal
referees,
Siakam. Yeah.
there was some bad calls in that game. I'll leave it at that. There was some bad calls in that game.
Yeah, it was tough. It was definitely tough. And then it felt like that last possession where Fred almost stole the ball, I should say. The referees almost just expected the Raptors to foul, and the whistle was going to be blown no matter what. And it didn't look like a foul. And, I love watching going back and forth between the Raptors broadcast and the Nets broadcast, especially during controversial plays like this. And Ian Eagle, who's the, color commentator for the Brooklyn Nets, he mentioned how that, that's a steal and the refs should not have called a foul. So when you're hearing that from the opposing commentators, I mean, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, can you really say the refs were the reson the Raptors lost? No, there were tons of
this is probably the reason
game.
the Raptors lost. Let's talk about this play, because this is what the internet is talking about. So I'd like to hear your take on it. Because I've seen a lot of people get mad at this double right here and open shot for Royce O'Neal, who I'm pretty sure was like 0 of 10 on the night before this shot, by the way. But yeah, like, what do you think about it, I guess?
It's, anytime you can say something's a really stupid double team or a stupid decision to double team, you kind of have to not just look at Fred's decision to kind of run, towards the top of the key, leave Royce O'Neal on the elbow, but it's also Fred's job not just to do that. He has to kind of signal to Gary that, hey, as soon as I leave this guy, you're coming up. And Gary almost has to tell, the guy down low, who I believe is Pascal Siakam, right underneath the net, you're coming towards my guy. So you just got to do a full scale rotation. But I guess at that point, Fred's just assuming that guys know, hey, we're going to double team here. That a miscommunication
I think guys
can do
do
for you.
know. I think guys do know. Like, my take on it is this. Like, a lot of people came into the end of that game, in terms of Twitter, people came in, watched the last 5 minutes, and were like, that's a terrible double. But if you watch the game, you know that Kyrie and KD were the only ones who got anything for the Nets all game offensively. Royce O'Neal couldn't hit anything. So the Raptors decided they were going to start double teaming those guys towards the end of the game. This, like, you have to be smart with your doubles. And this, I think, is on Gary, because I'm sure they talked about it in a timeout where Fred's going to, like, whoever is closest is going to double. It's the low man's job to cover for him. And Gary was a step late here. I'll still live with it. Like, even with that being said, I'll live with it, because
me too. Yeah.
The alternative is Kyrie playing one-on-one with Scotty. And if anyone who watched the game knew, Kyrie was cooking everyone. So like, I'll live with a Royce O'Neal semi-contested 3 over a Kyrie on Scotty one-on-one to seal the game. Like,
people forget,
that
Oren,
what it is.
Yeah, people forget that Kyrie, just over a minute left in the game, one-on-one isolation with Gary Trent Jr., who, if we stick to just perimeter defending, is one of the Raptors' most disruptive perimeter defenders. Hit a tough mid-range shot over Gary Trent Jr., one that was just a rainbow arcing. I mean, it's just a Kyrie Irving shot. He's one of those guys, he's made his namesake, in tough shot making in this league. If there's one guy that you want on an isolation at the end of the game, and you could choose from maybe 5 players in the league, Kyrie Irving's probably one of those 5 guys, if we're being honest. So I get it. The double wasn't perfect, but again, I'm okay with a shot like that. It went in, but it's Royce O'Neal at the end of the day. it is what
And
it
it's
is at
Royce
that point.
O'Neal having a really bad game
Yeah,
too.
he was
Like,
2 for 7. He had a bunch of turnovers in this game, costly turnovers. I'm okay with it. I mean, it is what it is. He's that 3-and-D guy for the Nets who they don't expect to get 15, 20 points. On most nights, not even 10 points from him. They just want him to focus defensively and just hit the open three. And I guess in this game, he hit it. It was a deep three from, the elbow. And I mean, it is what it is. I'd rather have that than, from Royce O'Neal than a Kyrie Irving one-on-one or a Kevin Durant one-on-one. And the reason I say that again, Oren, is because we saw that happen a minute before. We saw Kyrie Irving on Gary Trent Jr. We saw Kevin Durant collect the ball from 30 feet out top of the key and just splash on OG Anunoby's face. Like, there's just so much you can do with two guys who on any given night can be deemed arguably the best offensive players in the world, in Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. So, I mean, it is what it is. To start the game, though, Oren, the Raptors were, they went in same exact starting lineup as the home opener. Fred, Gary, OG, Scotty, Pascal. Gary started off actually first. He was just like the home opener. He started off very strong in the first quarter. He looked aggressive. He was finding his spots. The confidence was high. Siakam did have 2 early fouls in the game. He left. And then we got Delano Banton and Christian Koloko minutes again in the first quarter, which was cool to see. Koloko did show, in my opinion, he did show his value around the rim at times. But again, he's not a guy that's ready to play 20 minutes just yet in his NBA career. And you saw that tonight. You saw it, right?
yeah, he was good in the first half. And then in the second half, like, credit to Claxton. Claxton had one of the best games of legit, like, his career. He was really, really good on the offensive boards as a rim protector, in the pick and roll with some nasty finishes around Koloko. Like, Claxton straight up outplayed him. But Koloko, like, in the first half, I was really impressed with him. So I'm not like, my takeaway from that game isn't that, like, he's not ready for the NBA or anything like that. It's just that he had a bad second half. But it goes back to, like, like people are saying in the comments, the starters can't do everything. And tonight was a night where I actually, like, I don't know where you are on this. I actually thought the starters were really good tonight. I'd like to see, like, I could pull up how they were in terms of, like, plus minus in terms of how that specific group performed. But I feel like the starters are on a string as, like, offensively, I think they're creating some really good stuff. They
look
couldn't
good,
really
man.
get enough stops, but offensively, I'm really not too upset. When the bench came in, that's when the offense really looked terrible. But yeah, what have you thought about the starters so far this season?
Starters have looked fine, and I mentioned it to Kyle in our show a couple nights ago that this was, again, one of the biggest storylines leading into the season. Are the starters going to be able to find and generate, advantageous opportunities offensively? Are they going to be doing that consistently this season? Who knows? I mean, we've seen it so far in the first 2 games. It's looked good. I mean, especially in the half court setting, it's looked much better than I thought it would look. Guys look energetic. But the only thing is, Oren, if we're getting 36, 37, 38, 39 minutes from the starters for however many games this season, they're eventually going to start tiring out, right? You're gonna need guys like Otto Porter and guys like Chris Boucher to come in and give you those, advantageous minutes off the bench, those encouraging minutes we would see often from Chris Boucher, last season. I don't know. I mean, Precious in 2 games. I don't know, Warren.
It hasn't been a good look. It has not.
It hasn't looked great. And the reason I single out him is because, Precious Achiuwa for me was one of those guys that people had him pegged. I mean, we're not talking myself and yourself, Warren. Like, we're talking NBA. I believe, was it?
No,
Zach
we're talking
Lowe?
myself. I put literal money on him to win.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. I didn't know that. Okay. I didn't know that. There was a very prominent NBA writer who had him as the 6th man of the year. I think it might have been Zach Lowe. I'm not 100% sure, but somebody had him as 6th man of the year. Two prominent NBA writers. I think that was from
most improved. Most improved.
Sorry. I want more. I want more from Precious Achiuwa. Because let's be fair.
Let's be fair.
Yeah. You know you're not going to get a ton from Christian Koloko and Delano Banton, and you don't expect that, right?
Yes.
But you do expect that from Precious Achiuwa. and you
Exactly.
expect Thaddeus Young to give you a little bit more in the 2 games he's played so far, right?
Yeah.
We knew Hernan Gomez wasn't going to play every single game off the bench. We knew the same thing for Justin Champagny and Kem Birch. These guys are going to collect DNPs this season, right?
Mhm.
But you want it from Precious, and the Raptors haven't gotten it so far, and it's tough because
Yeah.
you need him to lead the bench, right?
Yeah, my problem with Precious is that he's playing with a little like arrogance in his game. And like when I say that, I mean like you'll see him float in between possessions. He won't sprint. Like the Raptors will throw a turnover, and instead of sprinting back on transition defense, he'll jog back. He's doing these things that like a superstar is allowed to do,
Mm-hmm.
but a guy who's ultimately fighting for minutes isn't allowed to do. And he was doing it in the preseason. Going like Precious out of all the guys in the preseason was going like the least hard. And I noticed, but I was like, okay, it's the preseason. Now that the games have started, I've still noticed that he's not giving like 110% effort. And that shows in the minutes he's getting. Like he got 17 tonight. He got like even less in the Cleveland game. He's throwing really silly turnovers. Like that one where he does this every game where he takes the ball up in transition, which I like the grab and go stuff from him. I like when he gets a defensive rebound and takes it up the court. But once he realizes that he doesn't have the numbers or he doesn't have a pathway to the rim, he needs to stop, secure the ball, and give it to Fred. And there's way too often that exchange is just so sloppy. And in this game, Ben Simmons like kind of pressured him and he hit it out of bounds and they got a turnover. And yeah, it's just like really sloppy play from Precious that is bothering me a little bit right now because as we saw last season, if he does give 100% effort and if he does lock in and just plays within his role a little bit, he's a really, really dynamic player off the bench.
Yeah, he just needs to kind of understand and assume what role he's being given here. I do see it. I do see a little bit of what you call the arrogance in Precious Achua. It's a very fine line because you want Precious to
Mhm,
be very confident. You want him
mhm.
to come in off the bench and give you something offensively, right?
And
But
you've seen these flashes, like he had
yeah,
that
you have.
one mid-range jumper this game off a attacking a closeout. Like you do see these flashes, so I want some of that. I want his role to expand, but that only comes if you're doing the other stuff already.
Yeah, for sure. Uh, I mean, Precious. There's the good thing is there's 80 games to go for Precious Achua. So I'm not 100% worried. I'm maybe hitting
Yeah.
20, 30% for Precious.
And I'm not
He
worried
didn't.
about Thad either, man. Thad's gonna play his way into the season. He's an old man. Give him some time.
Yeah, yeah. He just needs a just kind of a little just shock to his legs or something. I forgot what they used to call that to make people jump higher, but it's a little program I forgot back in high school. Um, Thaddeus Young, Precious Achua, Delano Banton, Christian Koloko. The Raptors only played 4 guys off the bench in this game. Is there anyone, Orrin, before we move on, is there anyone you wanted to see in this game that didn't get an opportunity?
Yeah, good question. I think this was a Malachi Flynn game. And I'm saying that mostly just because he torched the Nets last season, at the end of the
Yeah.
season, and he looked really good against them. But yeah, like in a game when the bench's real issues were offense and spacing and no one could really uh help any of the starters that were on the floor, it felt like Malachi should maybe get his chance. And like I understand like Banton won this spot in the preseason because of a really unlucky Flynn injury. And then Flynn is probably not in great rhythm because he's been wearing a mask and hasn't been able to play yet. And it's tough to throw him in the second half of a game after he hasn't played in a while. But yeah, like the Raptors finished with how many points in this game? I don't even have the score. They finished like with 90 points, right? It was a game that needed some offensive juice, and none of the guys we mentioned were giving it. Flynn, like, say what you will about Flynn, but he does have the ability to come in a game and really score the ball. So
Yeah.
that's the guy I want to see get some run in the next couple of games if the Raptors need some offense.
Yeah, I think I'm with you as well. The Raptors at times in this game they needed an offensive punch. They needed a guy to kind of hold the fort a little bit, run their sets a little bit smoother. Like you said, with certain guys in the game, it just looked clunky. It didn't look great. a lot of this game, if we're looking at it from a Nets perspective and we flip the whole script, they're looking at it like, the Raptors relied a hell of a lot on a very good Pascal Siakam game to stay in this game, right? And defensively for the Raptors, if you're looking at it, Durant, yes, he had 27. And Kyrie Irving, yes, he had 30, right, in 40 minutes. But he was 11 for 24, Kyrie Irving, right? 5 for 13 from three. Kevin Durant shot under 50% as well. He was 8 for 18, right?
Yeah,
Durant
KD was
particularly.
not great.
Yeah, KD particularly, yes, he did go to the free throw line 10 times. You saw the aggressiveness. You saw a guy who hit, a big shot at the end of the game, but he was a -8, right, in 35 minutes played. Like, that's not Kevin Durant like. So the Raptors, came into this game like they do with most, teams that harbor two, incredible, arguable top 10, top 5 NBA players. The Raptors came in and said, you know what? We're going to do our best and kind of structure our defensive tactics in a way where we can stop these two guys and let everyone else beat us. And unfortunately, at least in Nick Claxton's eyes, that worked for him. And then at the end there, we saw obviously Royce O'Neal, 2 for 7. Royce O'Neal, might I add, hit that big shot at the end. Do you think maybe Nick Nurse could have done anything differently in terms of how he approached this game? Or do you think the game was just there for the taking? I mean, they did do a pretty good job on Kyrie and Durant. That's probably the most you can ask for. Other than Nick Claxton, everyone was pretty silent, I guess.
Yeah, those
Nets,
guys
right?
definitely hit really tough shots, Kyrie and KD, and there's nothing you can do about those. In terms of like Nick Nurse, not so much him, but like the players, turnovers were a huge issue for the Raptors tonight. You just can't turn the ball over that much. This is like my issue. This is a good clip to demonstrate it, and I really don't blame Nick Nurse so much as I blame, like, unfortunately, Gary Trent Jr., and this has kind of been my issue with him in the starting lineup too, is like when you have one guy who's not on the same string defensively as the other four, you really notice it. And this happened, I mean, a few times in the game. We just highlighted a clip at the end of the game on the double where Gary was a step late. In my opinion, maybe that wasn't like communicated ahead of time that Fred was going to double, but that's my guess, is that Gary was a step late. And here's another one where, like, let's talk about the Nets a little bit, because like Ben Simmons to start the season, he doesn't look at the rim. He had like a floater early in the game, but like I've watched some preseason, I've watched their last game, like he won't look at the rim. And so you need to not react too much to what he's doing, and you need to stay on your man and stay home.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he takes a contested layup, that's absolutely fine. And like this play right here, Gary has no reason to tag him. He's the strong side guy. He needs to stay home. Scotty's the tag. And this happens several times where, they're letting Ben do what he wants to do, which is pass. And you got to make Ben. How many times did we actually see Ben take a layup tonight? Like even a wide open layup, like none. And that's what you have to make Ben do, is take contested layups. So
I mean, he shot 5 shots in the game in total. So,
and that just goes to show, like, they didn't do the game plan, which is the game plan has to be to let Simmons shoot and take away the other guys. I will say the Nets in a playoff setting, I don't know how teams are just going to completely ignore Simmons. Teams are going to completely ignore Simmons, like way better than this.
Yeah.
And it's going to be really hard for them.
It's going to be really difficult. They need a third guy. And Oren, I'm not giving up on the Nets at all, especially 2 games. I'm not giving up on any team, really, because they do have one guy that I'm very intrigued with on their team who did not play tonight. And that is none other than TJ Warren, who has proved that on any given night, he can put up 20 or sometimes 30. So I'm not,
Simmons too is sitting for them.
Yeah, exactly. So
sorry, Seth
Curry, not Simmons. Yeah. But it's funny enough because you're right. Simmons had, he attempted only 5 shots. He hit 3. He had like a typical kind of Ben Simmons or Draymond Green, whatever you want to call it, game. 6 points, 10 rebounds, 8 assists. 6 points and in this game, 4 points in his last game, or in 10 points in 2 games from Ben Simmons. You're right. I feel like, kind of forget about Ben Simmons in a way offensively. Teams don't have that luxury of really focusing in and game planning as much as they can in the regular season because you probably have a game either the night following or the night after. So in Ben Simmons' case, when he runs into that potential playoffs that the Brooklyn Nets are obviously vying for, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be very difficult if they don't have that third guy. That third guy, at least in the first half of last season and the season before that was James Harden. He's a Philadelphia 76er now. So we'll see. I mean, Ben Simmons did, I guess, what he had to do in a game like this. Like I said, he was a near triple-double. He did have some weird turnovers in this game, but he's doing a lot of handoffs. He's doing a lot of Draymond Green stuff. It's a lot of, dribble handoffs, DHOs, stuff like that. And I mean, maybe this is just their way of kind of easing him into the offense, so at least from the Brooklyn Nets perspective. For the Raptors, though, I mean, there's not much you can say. You had 57 points from Durant and Kyrie Irving. If you add Nick Claxton to that, that's 76 points out of the 109 for that Brooklyn scored tonight. 76 out of 109, that's 70%, I would assume, with my crappy math skills. All from three players. Not sustainable, but also not sustainable for the Raptors either. I mean, they did have balanced scoring from the four other starters, OG with 10, Scotty with 17, Fred 18, and Gary 14. Pascal did have 37. But do you think, are you a little bit, to go back to the bench, or are you worried with Otto Porter being out for an extended amount of time, Chris Boucher being out until, who knows when? Are you a little bit worried that this might be, a repeat of what we saw from the Raptors last season, where the bulk of the scoring comes from the top 5 or 6 guys and you get nothing else from players 7 to 12, I guess you could say?
Yeah, I'm not really worried about the scoring in particular. I think that's the way the roster is set up, where the top 5 are going to be staggered and they're going to do the majority of the scoring. Maybe a little bit worried though about the bench in general, just more so just like, is Nick going to keep playing these guys this much? Because that's not like sustainable, as we know. Like he already shortened the rotation after one game, right? To the Brooklyn game, he already shortened it by one man, taking Juancho out. And so maybe that's a worry. In general, though, I'm pretty pleased with how the Raptors played through 2 games. If you watch games around the league, like, most teams are not this organized, especially offensively, I think, like as the Raptors have been. So I think they've had a good summer. They've had a good training camp, and I think it's showing. Pascal, like, the important things are that Pascal looks great, and there's like this clear role definition within the offense where Fred has taken a bit of a step back to allow OG and Scotty to do more. So I'm definitely encouraged. The only thing I guess that's a worry is like that starting unit's defense it can't only be good in the last 5 minutes of games. It has to play well throughout the whole game if they're going to stay together.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on really quickly, Oren, we're back to Taxman.
I think we should call this award the not Pascal Siakam award.
Yeah.
Like, because
what's funny?
we agreed on like, I remember I listened to your pod and we agreed on like not doing the person who like impressed us the most relative to their expectation, right? Mm-hmm. It was still Pascal tonight if you just did it that way.
Yeah.
So we need to just call it the not Pascal award.
Yeah. It's tough. We talked about this also during the offseason, because we felt like Taxman almost belonged solely to Pascal Siakam last season. Other than Pascal, maybe, because, at the same time, we have to give him his due. I mean, we talked about it earlier, 37 points, 13 rebounds, 11 assists on 15 for 20 shooting. In the grand scheme of things, this might be his best game for the rest of the season. Like, that's how good he played. And we're talking about a guy who, if he stays healthy, this is an all NBA level player, right? Pascal, bona fide, bar none. There's no discussion being had anymore, right? Do you think, if you take Pascal out of that equation, there is anyone worthy of our Taxman player tonight?
Yeah.
Because I have a
I
guy
would
in
give
mind.
it. Yeah, I would give it to Fred.
Yeah, me too.
Just because the way the game was looking, I felt like, I mean, he was being passive, and as I said, I'm okay with that. But it just didn't feel like he was like gonna take over. And then all of a sudden in the fourth quarter, when it really mattered, he just hit like two big pull up threes. He found OG for an open three. He hit that step back at the end of the game, like in the mid range. So he really carried them in the fourth quarter when they started doubling Pascal. And like last season, that like Fred was getting a ton of double teams based on how the offense was. This season, I think teams are gonna have a really hard time adjusting to like Fred playing off ball so much. And then because when Fred plays off ball, the offense is so weird and different, where it's like it's a lot of like post up stuff. And then he runs a pick and roll here, and like you shouldn't drop back that far on a Fred pick and roll. But I think it's hard for defenses to adjust after they haven't seen that all game. So yeah, Fred for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. I think Fred's my taxman of the night for sure. A full, two-way game that you typically see from Fred VanVleet. So me and Orna are in agreement. We have Fred VanVleet as the taxman of the night, and that taxman of the night is brought to you by canamtax.com. You could call them at 416-243-2912. Again, that's canamtax.com. These are,
Yeah,
tax
you guys
season. It's
almost
it's
this guy he was probably listening last episode like, "Hey man, I'm still the sponsor."
yeah, exactly. And the good thing is, if for any Pascal lovers out there, because there are quite a bit of Pascal fan accounts out there on Raptors Twitter now, Pascal will get his. So don't worry. Don't you worry just yet. He will
40
get
points.
his.
40 points and
Yeah.
he'll give it to him.
Yeah, exactly. This one's going to go to Fred. And I'm sorry, Pascal. I know a lot of our viewers and our listeners are not going to like that. But, we get a lot of great Pascal games in the 82 game season. So we're not too worried. So again, canamtax.com. This was brought to you again by Canamtax. 416-243-2912. I don't know why I saw 343. I had to read that twice.
Okay, and
416-243.
Pascal for the Pascal fans. Pascal does get play of the game if we can cue that up. Yep, shout out to our producer
Oh, I
KN.
know what this is. This is great.
Yeah, we're doing play of the game. We're trying to do more segments this year, by the way, fans. So Pascal definitely gets the play of the game segment here, where he stuffs it on KD with the left hand. He stuffed it on KD last season also and got a poster out of it. So it's good to see this continuing. This was a pretty crazy dunk.
And for our podcast listeners, this was with 8:30 left in the third quarter. Score is 58-54. Brooklyn was up 4. Pascal got the defensive rebound. He dribbled it up in like maybe 4 or 5 strides. Quick pass to Gary Trent. The ball gets funneled around from OG to Scotty back to Pascal. And by that time, he was already crowning Kevin Durant. It was an and one, which was great to see. A great dunk, and it silenced the Barclays Center crowd, which was nice to see. And like Oren said, Pascal's almost making it an annual thing for Kevin Durant. I don't know if this is a dislike that he has for Kevin or what it is, but this is becoming an annual crowning. A Pascal on Kevin Durant crowning, and we're not talking about House of Dragon. That was our play of the game.
Category. I got one more category of the night, which is the tweet of the night. Another thing we're trying to introduce.
Oh, is this me?
We used to do it. No, I got one. Well, you can show another one if you do. You have another one? Just send it in the private chat. Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't see anything too great from you. No, this is Josh Lundberg. This is a very serious tweet. It wasn't a funny one, but it's a good one. Yeah, it took 284 games for Pascal Siakam to record his first career triple-double. He's now recorded 3 of them in his last 8 games. I saw another tweet that puts him second in the Raptors franchise all top franchise triple-double list behind Kyle Lowry. So pretty wild. Last 8 games to get all 3 of them. It just shows the progression for him.
Yeah, and he mentioned that he didn't like how he only had 1 assist in that first game, and that wasn't really a Pascal Siakam issue. I think it was more or less it was a combination of guys weren't hitting shots and the ball was just getting funneled around versus the Cleveland Cavaliers in the home opener. So I don't think it was a Pascal Siakam kind of hog fest. But this is great to see. I mean, the ball's moving. He's scoring at a very efficient rate. He looks unstoppable in one-on-one situations. Um, I mean, the Raptors have an all-NBA bona fide star on their hands. This is a guy who, I mentioned it, I think, just over a month ago on my Twitter account, how I believe Pascal is a top 15 player in the league. And, I got some DMs and some mentions of people who disagreed. And, of course, Raptors Twitter agreed for the most part. And I genuinely believe if you look at the last 3 years dating back to that finals, the season that the Raptors won the championship, his finals performance, his playoff performance, I think there's no doubt in my mind that Pascal Siakam has solidified himself as a top 15, if not, or top 20, if not top 15 player in the league. He's a guy that does it in, two ways. He's not just an offensive superstar. He's a guy that defensively he can wreak havoc, a guy who can score in one-on-one situations, a guy who can facilitate the ball, a guy who can rebound the ball, a guy who, late in the game, if he switches on the best offensive opposing player, you're not, in a state of panic like you would be if it were a Kyrie Irving or a Steph Curry, for example. I just think Pascal's complete. There's no,
he's even hitting threes this season, bro.
Yeah, which is now I can really call him complete. There's no part of his game that I look at and I say he needs to get much, much, much better at that. So, I mean, shout out to Pascal. He had a great game, and we'll see probably plenty more this season. Oren, do you want to add anything else?
No, I think that's good for me personally.
Yeah,
I'm ready to go watch Nuggets Warriors.
Warriors, yeah. This is a great game that unfortunately the Raptors did lose. Before you guys leave us tonight on Wrap Up Live, we need you to subscribe to the Raptors Republic YouTube. Guys, like the video. We got a ton of views on the first home opening video, but the likes they weren't great. I mean, we appreciate you guys always, but if you guys could especially if you stayed with us from start to finish, I guess, that was the wrap up. Your official Raptors Republic post-game live show where your Toronto Raptors were defeated by the Brooklyn Nets in Barclays Center, 109-105. That brings the Raptors record to 500 on the season, 1-1. This live show was produced by the magician in the background, the wizard, Keon Haddad. And that was it for myself. Sahal Abdi, again here with Oren Weisfeld. You guys could follow us on Twitter, same at Oren Weisfeld and Sahal Abdi. And that's going to do it. I mean, the next game is tomorrow night, I believe.
Tomorrow night,
Miami.
Kyle Lowry Bowl. It's going to be a good one. Yeah. Heat 0-2. They're coming there. It's not going to be an easy one against the Heat tomorrow night.
Yeah, it won't be easy at all. We'll see you guys next time.